you've got these accountancy firm owners who are great at what they do, but they question themselves and they don't charge enough for it. There is so much psychology and belief and doubting and questioning of themselves that's in that. And it's releasing themselves and saying, you're good enough. You are great at what you do. You do deserve to get paid more.
Accountancy firm owners, bookkeeping business owners are a business owner first and foremost. Talk to me about that philosophy, where it came from in you and why it's so important.
So the primary function of a business is to make money. You could have an incredible reason why, and your business makes no money and you will fail.
Work-life balance is a phrase that you and I don't quite resonate with.
So first of all, it's just life. You're not going to get today back. Tried many different business ideas. None of them took off the ground.
Why, before you move on, just tell us why they didn't work, 'cause it's really important.
I remember the liquidator saying to me, it's the saddest situation winding this business up because you had so much right. Everyone was so happy with what you were doing so well. And it was just this one component, but that was the most important component that we'd screwed up.
Welcome to Firm Up. I'm your host, Heather Elkington, and I'm joined for this entire first series by James Ashford. James founded GoProposal alongside being the director of a successful accountancy practice. Join me throughout this first series as I grill James on the mindsets and practical tips on everything you need to build an exceptional firm. Good morning, Mr. Ashford.
Morning, Heath.
I'm going to kick us off with a story. So you're my uncle, my dad's brother. And so if I started from when we first met, it would be a very long time ago, and I don't think I could remember it. So I'm going to start us off with the way our business relationship and partnership came about, which was quite funny. So we were at the races for my something's birthday, I can't remember it now, 5 years ago. And we'd had a few drinks and everyone was having fun. And I let you know that I was moving up to Manchester with my partner at the time. And the first thing you said was, I've got a job going. You turned your chair around and put me under some serious pressure.
In front of everyone.
In front of everyone. Put me under some serious pressure. And I said, is this an interview? He said, yes, this is now. So we had an interview there and then. And the next moment that I remember was I was at Birmingham train station a couple of weeks later. And you'd been through the motion with MAP, which we'll talk about in a sec, about employing me and what that would mean, being a family member. And decided that you wanted to do another off-the-cusp interview there and then with no warning whatsoever. So you rang me and I was walking through Birmingham train station for the first time in my life. If you've ever been to Birmingham train station, it is so complex. There is about 1 million platforms. And I had a big suitcase behind me. I had a bag in the other hand. And you just started asking me questions about developers and about the SaaS world. And I'm struggling with my phone in one hand and to get these suitcases through the station. So, but we managed it and here we are today.
Brilliant. Great story.
Is that your same experience with that story?
Yeah, so I overheard you talking to your friend saying you were coming to Manchester, and I heard the word Manchester and I turned my chair and you said, is this an interview? And I said, it is now. And in my head, you said, for what job? And I didn't have a job. I had no idea what role I wanted you for. I just wanted you. And I think that's like one of the biggest challenges that people have, which is just finding brilliant people. Mm-hmm. And I just always like hugely respected what you'd done up until that point. And obviously I know you well. I know your values and what you stand for. I know your work ethic. And I just wanted brilliant people. I'll figure the job out later.
Yes. And that's really shaped GoProposal at what it is today, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Just bringing in brilliant people. Okay. So I'm going to go way back to, way back before we even met. So what do I need to know about your childhood and how that shaped who you are today?
Yeah, so I guess quite a bit of my childhood with us being related and from the same village and things like that. So from a Yorkshire town, Yorkshire village, a mining village, which I guess brings an element of grit and I always think honesty as well. Like you can't survive in a place like that, which is like being dead honest with each other and a very strong work ethic. My family before that had a farming background, so just hugely like focused on work, strong work ethic, doing whatever it takes, etc. And a comfortable background as well, not like didn't really want for anything as a child, but just always striving. And I think I guess I could take that question any way you want, but the thing that I guess would stand out most for me is never feeling quite good enough and always seeking my parents' approval. And I think as a male, you naturally seek your father's approval and never getting it. And nothing I ever did felt good enough. And I don't say this as kind of it's a bad thing or blaming him or anything like that, because I actually think it really shaped me, and I wouldn't change a single thing. And I'm sure he didn't do it out of any malice, but just always trying things, whether it's a drawing or a painting or making something or doing well at school or whatever, and just never kind of getting that praise. And I think one of a turning point for me was when I was at secondary school and starting to do mock exams for GCSEs. And this was the first time that kind of your education started to become real, and you started to think about grades that could affect your university placement or affect your job, etc. And I'm sure it was my year. It was the first year that the concept of A stars came up. So we've been told about the importance of our mock exams and starting to think about, well, what am I going to aim for? And my parents had kind of said there was a cash incentive if I got an A, or a greater incentive if I got an A star. So I thought, right, I'm going to get an A star. And then somewhere in the mix in my thinking, I was thinking, right, not only am I going to get an A star, but I'm going to aim for best in the class. Because I was in the top set, but I wasn't the smartest guy in the room. Absolutely not. I didn't used to get the highest results, but I thought, not only am I going to get an A star, but I'm going to get the top grade in this class. And this was a real pivotal shift in my thinking, and I don't quite know where it came from. I can guess, but it was, not only am I going to do that, but I'm going to get 100%. Because why don't I just aim for 100%? Because at that point, I don't need approval from anyone. I don't need praise from anyone, because it can't get any better. And that one shift in my thinking and that raising of my standards was so important, because it made life so much simpler in that. So for example, I remember being sat in the class, in the maths class, and like the teacher would say something and you think, I don't understand what she's saying. I don't even know what that word means. And you sat there thinking, if I ask this, I'm going to feel embarrassed, like saying I don't know this. But because I had this clear focus of it, I had to get 100%. I didn't care about being embarrassed. I said, I don't know what that means. I don't understand what you're saying. Can you explain it? I remember explaining it again and saying, yeah, I still don't understand that. And I remember her getting annoyed and saying, look, well, if you don't understand it, you're going to have to come back at break time. I'm like, yeah, which one? Which break? Like the loss of breaks, feeling embarrassed, looking stupid, none of that mattered anymore, because I had a very clear focus of what I wanted to do. And I remember revising really hard, looking at exam technique. And I remember going to that exam, laughing. It was in the gym. And I remember laughing on the way in, and people like getting annoyed with me. And it was because I'd prepared so much. I felt confident going to that exam. And I remember exactly where I was sat in the gym. And I remember going through the paper very meticulously, skipping over questions I didn't know, so not getting stressed out about them, returning back to them, going through it all, reading back through it again, and getting to the end of that exam thinking, I think that's everything right. I think I have 100%. And then at the end of that, a couple of weeks later, they marked the exam. And I remember Mrs. Witherden in one of the math classes out in one of the huts on the field. And she was kind of saying, right, we've had so many A's, so many A stars. And on the middle of the board, she wrote 100%, and she circled it. And she said, but someone in this class has achieved something that no one else has ever achieved in this school before. Someone's got 100%. And they kept going around everyone saying, I bet it's Andrew Dobinson, I bet it's Charlotte Fowler, I bet it's Paul Townsend. No one mentioned my name. And I was sat there at the back of the class thinking, I think this is going to be me. I think this will be me. And not like arrogant, just thinking, I think I set out to, I think I've done it. And she said it was James Ashford. I just remember staring at her. I didn't look at anyone else. I just remember looking at her and smiling. And I did it again twice more throughout my time. I got 100% twice again. And it's just that, I don't know where it comes from. I know that like seek of perfectionism means if you do seek it, you do it because you're avoiding criticism or you don't need praise or whatever. So I'm sure you can unravel that and there's some psychology in there. But it was also if you're going to go for it, why don't you just aim for the best?
Yeah. Love that. There's three things you've said that I've written down that I can just see in GoProposal as a business, in me, and in the way you affect everyone around you. And those three things are high standards. So I think naturally growing up, my standards were high, but never on purpose. It was always just a passive thing. But when I joined GoProposal and started to immerse myself in this world, high standards was the only option. And it wasn't necessarily perfection, but it was, your standards are the thing that when people aren't looking, that's what you hold up. The next thing is being curious. So you said asking why and just being curious. So that's a core value that we had at GoProposal, which was be curious and drive change. And then the last one is not being bothered about looking stupid. Yeah. I think especially women are often criticized for, putting themselves out there, being louder, being more confident. And since I've joined GoProposal, and I know this has been a knock-on effect for a lot of the team as well, if things like posting on LinkedIn, people think that when you post on LinkedIn, it's for your ego. It's not. If anything is going to bring your ego down to earth, it is posting on LinkedIn. You have to, we have to get over this fear of looking stupid. So yeah, I can see how so much of that has built up to creating this successful GoProposal world. So another thing that I think being in your presence and everyone around you, especially the GoProposal team, but I'm sure more people have had the knock-on effect of, is just that you have been so obsessed your entire life with learning, taking time out to read, and in Untapped, in your book Untapped, the first chapter is the story of the two woodcutters. Yeah. So just talk to me about, first of all, maybe explain that story, and just talk to me about how that has made who you are today.
Sure. So the story of the woodcutters is not my story. No. I've stolen it from people far cleverer than me, and it gets retold in various forms. But it's a story of two woodcutters, and they're both chopping wood all day, every day, and they do it for months on end. And one of the guys keeps taking a break, keeps taking breaks throughout his day. But at the end of the day, he has more wood chopped than the other woodcutter. This goes on for many months. And eventually the guy who doesn't chop as much wood goes to the guy and says, look, you're going to have to tell me what you're doing. How on earth, at the end of every day, are you chopping more wood than me when I'm working harder than you, I'm working longer than you, and you seem to keep taking breaks? He said, I'm not taking breaks, I'm sharpening my axe. And I think of that every time that we learn and every time that we develop ourselves, that you're actually sharpening your axe. And I think in business, business leaders or anyone in any role, in fact, don't take time out of the day or out of their week and commit that to learning and developing because they feel that, they should have learned what they've learned now. They should be implemented. They should be doing what they need to do. But like one of the things that we've advocated from the start of GoProposal, and I saw this with another business, a really good friend of mine, Paul Goff, and he did it with his business, is half a day every week, every member of staff, down tools, shut up shop, and developed themselves, worked on different areas of themselves, on areas of the business. And so when I started GoProposal, I really wanted to do that for myself, making sure that I felt comfortable having that time out to do that, but also instilling it in the team as well. We've invested in Audible, in Masterclass, in various other things, but just encouraging that learning, because I know that every time that you do that, you're sharpening your axe and you're becoming better when you return to it. But what you said there was, you've always done this, and I haven't always done it. Like, I did well at school and I learned what I learned, did well in my degree. Back onto the master, when I completed my degree, by the way, I got 100% in my degree. The university had never had it before anyone get it, but they didn't give me 100%. They gave me 93%. And I became very good friends with one of the tutors afterwards. He passed away recently, actually. And he confessed to me, he says, look, we graded your degree at 100%, but we didn't know what that'd mean for us. We thought we'd like get investigated or something if we gave a student 100%. So we thought 93% was high enough to make you happy and keep us off the radar. So anyway, that was that. So I did my degree, I did very well, and I was very curious and studious after that. And then after that, I just drifted. And I do think this is an issue for a lot of young people, whereby you're very successful in that academic world. You maybe even be captain of the football team or the rugby team, or you've been getting A stars or whatever. And then you get thrown into this big wide world and you're at the bottom of a mountain again. And it's a huge one to climb. And you're nothing and nobody and no one cares. And I found myself in that position, and I did wander for a long time and struggle for a long time. And I stopped learning. There's a good phrase by Jim Rohn, which is, kind of like formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. And I didn't discover that until many years later, when I'd been down various paths, lost my way, and then I returned to this journey of these two areas. Tony Robbins talks about it, which is the 6 areas of your life, 6 needs that we have to fulfill, but it's the final 2 where you'll get most fulfillment, which is growth and contribution. And the reason why we should grow and develop ourselves personally is so that we can contribute. People think it's selfish for you to invest time in yourself and to learn and develop yourself. But if you want to be better in your business, if you want to be better with your team, if you want to be better in your relationships, better with your finances, you have to grow yourself so that you can contribute. The purpose of why we do what we do is to contribute to others. That's what should be driving us. But the only way we can do that is by growing and developing. So it was actually something that I came back to many years later, which was that growth. And then once I got back on that path, then ever since then, it's been a continual journey of growth.
Yeah. Something interesting that keeps going through my head now that I want to ask you is, what is your number one priority? Because when I think about this, a lot of people would say their kids, they would say their partner, but people would rarely admit that your number one priority needs to be yourself, your own mental well-being and your own physical well-being. So therefore you can take care of those people better.
Yeah.
So what would you say is your number one priority?
Yeah, I think it is me. I think it is making sure that my head's in the right place, that I'm developing myself and that I'm growing the best I can and striving towards my goals, even if that means sometimes being away from my family or being away from my kids. And like, you can think, well, that's selfish, but it's not. If you want to be a good role model for your kids, it's to show them you go after your dreams, you pursue, you have to do that, not at the cost of everything else. And everything does come with a cost, by the way. Anything worthwhile pursuing, anything that you want to achieve and grow, there is always a cost attached to that. And you have to ask yourself, am I prepared to pay that cost? So with the growth of GoProposal, and I don't think I've been asked this, or I certainly don't talk about it much. It was obviously hard and a lot of graft of getting to where I wanted to get to, but it wasn't crazy. Like, I was around my family a lot. I was present and there for my children a lot. So I could have taken it further. I could have grown it more before we sold it, etc. But that would have come at a cost. And I was actually comfortable with the balance that I had. So it's about me first and foremost, and making sure that I'm in the best place I can be, that I'm growing at a good rate and developing myself, because that's the only way that I can be the right partner for Becky. And then in terms of our relationship and with the kids, where do the kids fit? It's not the kids next. It's mine and Becky's relationship, and our marriage is the next thing that's on the priority list, because we need that, stable, secure marriage and to be close so that we can then therefore be the best parents we can be for our kids. If you put your kids at the number one thing, that's going to be the cost of your marriage, it'll be the cost of yourself, and you just become bitter and pissed off. And then that is not the role model to show to your kids. So the kids are actually further down the pecking order, and they know that because I tell them that.
I'd love to hear that conversation. No, I saw someone post something on LinkedIn not long ago talking about the priorities and saying kids are my number one priority. And I don't have kids, so I didn't feel I was in a position to talk about it, but my feelings were of that. Just, you have to put your own oxygen mask on first.
Absolutely. But also for their sake, because when they get into the big wide world and they get into a company or in business or with clients, they'll very quickly realize they're not the center of attention. They're not the be all and end all at all. And so I think there is a danger that if you raise them up and everything centers around them and they become the most important thing, you're setting them up for failure, because then they'll go into the world and realize they're not. They're at the bottom of a big pile that they've got to start climbing through,
Yeah, and I've seen that play out. So we've kind of just got touched into it there, but work-life balance is a phrase that you and I don't quite resonate with. I think it's an unpopular opinion. I know when I've talked about it before online, I've had a lot of controversy that's been brought to me about my opinion on this situation. So I just really want us to talk through it. So work-life balance, in my opinion, is a phrase that can be quite dangerous, because it's seen as you must have your work life and your work and your home life separate. You must work 9 to 5, finish, shut the laptop, leave it at an office and go home and do the household personal things. And they must not bleed into one another. But the reality is they will always bleed into one another. So my perfect scenario is finding work that fulfills you so that you can be in your personal life, you can be your best self. And likewise, bringing your personal and true, whole, authentic self to work. So that the two things combine. So you and I will often have conversations where it's not work-life balance. It's all work. It's all life.
Yeah.
And when you can know that and find the best scenario of both, that's when the real harmony starts. But have you ever found building a successful business, growing it the way it has, bleed into your personal life?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot to unravel there in that one little phrase.
Yes.
So first of all, it's just life.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, you're not going to get today back, right? And I've said that to when you started working for us and for GoProposal and anyone that's ever joined, like, wherever you work, you're not going to get that part of your day back. So the moment you park that and say, that's not my life, this is my life here. But the majority of the time that you spend is not going to be with your family. It's not going to be on holiday. It's going to be at work from the age of 20 till 60 or whatever, or however long you work for. So if you see that as work, and then the moment you say the word work, that has certain associations with it that you maybe don't feel comfortable with, then you're setting yourself up for a difficult life, where to my mind, it's just life. You're not getting today back. I also don't like the word work. You can replace that, because if I say this is your work, or it's your mission,
yes, then
you're doing the same thing, but instantly those words have a different feeling and a different vibe, But if I take it in the strictest sense, in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of life, in terms of spending that with Becky, who's my wife, or with Leo, Scott, and Lucy, children, and you want to get that, there is a balance, right, between focusing on your mission or your intimate relationships or your own, it's everything. There's so many things that go into life. So it's your mission, it's your finances, it's your intimate relationships, it's your relationship with your kids, it's your friendship, it's your physical health, it's your mental health. It's getting all of those things right. And if you don't have all of those things right, or you're not developing them all or pushing them all, then you're not going to be successful and you're not going to be fulfilled, because you have an amazing intimate personal relationships, you could be doing well financially and have no friendships, or you could be, really unhealthy physically or mentally in a really bad way, that you're failing, So we have to be mindful that we're pushing all of these things. That said, there will be different times when the emphasis is greater, in that I now need to really concentrate on this part. And for certainly a good number of years, it has been growing the business, getting ourselves where we're financially secure. But to my mind, that is one of the best things I could have done for my family and for my children as well, to set us up for life. Because the other thing you got to think about is, you can think about in time scales. So we're talking about what's the best work-life balance, if you want to use that phrase, for now, for this week, for this month, or for the next 10 years, or for the next 50 years. So the moment you kind of extrapolate that out time-wise, changes your view about it as well.
Yes. Mission.
Yeah.
Love that you brought that word up.
Yeah.
So if we were to say the mission of you and of GoProposal, which we've been brilliantly working towards, for me, for nearly the last 5 years, for you for a bit longer, is to give the entire accountancy industry, so accounting and bookkeeping business owners, the tools and education to serve their clients to the highest levels, be profitable, and build the businesses that they want. Has that always been your mission? Has that always been your purpose? Maybe not necessarily with the industry, but for businesses and for small businesses. Where does that come from? Has it always been there?
So probably have to go a bit deep here again. So if we go back to I've had like therapy around this to try and figure this out, to try and unravel my head, right? So if you think back to like my childhood, all I wanted someone to do was to say, "You're good enough." I think that's it. That's what we want. At the bottom of all fears and the bottom of all addictions and bad behaviors is this question of, am I good enough? And I just wanted to know that about myself, I guess. So if I look at the stuff that lights me up the most, we've talked about this loads, but about your strengths, right? So what is a strength? I'm a brilliant cleaner. Yeah, I used to be a cleaner in an old people's home. The toilets used to be immaculate. No one can clean a toilet like me, because I will get my hand round that U-bend and I will shine it right. So you could say to me, your strength is cleaning toilets. You should therefore do that, right? It's our strength, but it's not what strengthens me. And so the way to ask yourself is, what is a true strength? Is what, if you did this, strengthens you, you feel strong as a result of it. And I get shivers as I was about to say this, but it's when I feel that I I don't know if this is the right word, but release someone or unlock the potential in someone because it's already there in you, right? I don't need to give it to you. You've already got this. And like, if I think about how I've worked with you, it's just giving you the space to flourish and to become your best self, unlocking you. And what I mean by that is uncoupling you from thought patterns or belief systems that you've got because you've inherited it or it's from your past experiences or whatever, and saying we can let them go. You're good enough, let's go, and releasing you to go and crack on. And on my desk in my office, I have a golden buzzer that my friend sent me, right? Because I don't watch a lot of TV, but I watch like snippets on YouTube and stuff. But there's one thing that like really makes me feel emotional and I just start crying is when I see a golden buzzer pressed on Britain's Got Talent, right? Or something like that. So you'll have a kid or an adult going on there to sing or to dance or whatever it is that they're going to do. And you can imagine they've been practicing this in the bedroom for years and doubted themselves and questioned themselves. And now they've put themselves on this stage in front of lots of people and up for judgment as well. And they've gone and done this and they've got all this doubt and all this insecurity that we all carry with us. And then someone has hit that golden buzzer on them. Mm-hmm. And there's like Susan Boyle, for example, I've what like it's got millions of views. I must be responsible for like 1 million of those. But like just someone who doubted themselves and someone hits that golden buzzer, and just that, you know, the showering down of the gold sprinkles, and you watch them like literally fall to the floor crying, and it's such a release for them. It's someone saying you are good enough. And so when I think about what I do that lights me up the most is creating GoProposal, creating a company where we can create the space for people to work for us, where we can unlock them and release them and allow them to flourish. And it's what we do with our product as well, where you've got these accountancy firm owners who are great at what they do, but they question themselves and they don't charge enough for it. And what they don't realize is that, you know, it's not just an issue of pricing. There is so much psychology and belief and doubting and questioning of themselves that's in that. And it's releasing themselves and saying, you're good enough. You are great at what you do. You do deserve to get paid more. And then in turn, helping their clients to do the same. So if I was to think about my mission and what lights me up and what resonates with me the most, it's that.
It's brilliant. And I can verify the buzzer because I get videos from YouTube sent constantly. And the thing I love about hearing this as well is I have seen you create those moments for so many people. I've seen accountancy firm business owners in tears, bookkeepers in tears, because they've never been told that. They've never been told you can charge what you're worth. You aren't just a compliance tool that businesses need on the side. Your services are so valuable. So I love how you can create that moment for people. So GoProposal, we have 9 philosophies at the core of what we do. And it's the first one that I want to talk about today. So as we go through the episodes of this podcast, we're going to touch on each one of those philosophies. The one I want us to get to today is that accountancy firm owners, bookkeeping business owners are a business owner first and foremost.
Yeah.
So they run a business. That is their primary job, not to be an accountant or a bookkeeper, but to run a business. And the primary function of a business is to make money.
Yeah.
So just talk to me about that philosophy, where it came from in you and why it's so important.
Okay, so I always knew I wanted to be a business owner. I don't quite know where that thought came from because my family certainly don't run businesses. But I think it was seeing like my parents work very hard, work very late. I was a latchkey kid, which means that you turn up from school to an empty house and you go in on your own because my parents would be out working. And then I would see other people that I knew, friends, parents who were running businesses, and they just seemed to live more interesting lives, seemed to be having more of a laugh and doing more interesting things, and maybe drove nicer cars and seemed to be more in control of their lives and stuff. And so I was always kind of lured by that and believing that I would one day set up a business. Tried many different business ideas. None of them took off the ground. And like I'm saying, many different business. I once listed them on LinkedIn. There's loads, right? None of them worked.
Why? Before you move on, just tell us why they didn't work, because it's really important.
Either the wrong idea or something going wrong early on, and me not understanding how to overcome those obstacles, or not being in the right space mentally, not having the right level of maturity. Certainly when I built Rocket Powered, which was my marketing agency that I built, that was the first time that I'd got a proper business that was starting to pay us some money. I was getting a couple of grand a month from it. And all of a sudden I'd created this thing that we had clients that we were delighting, and I had a small team of people. It started to feel like a proper business. But where that failed unknowingly to me at the time was because I didn't invest in the full finance function of that business. I got nearly everything else right. The marketing of it, the systemization of it, the impact we're having on our clients, etc. And I thought we were doing well, but I didn't actually know. I remember saying to my accountant, I think I need management accounts or something. I need some information every month so I know that I'm on the right track. And I remember him saying to me, that's overkill for a business of your size. So I would get 18-month-old data at the end of doing our annual accounts. Then it gets processed 6 months later to say, this is how you did 18 months ago. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I think that's useful to me. But I had no budget. I had no forecast. I had no goals. I had no way of knowing I was on track. I was making decisions that were based on my gut instinct. So, for example, I always remember little things like we had a big client that we were about to win, and it was a huge project. And he said, look, if you let us pay in installments over 12 months, we'll go ahead with the project. I'm like, that's a brilliant idea. Why didn't I think of that before? Yeah, sure. Pay in installments. The next project that came along, do you want to pay in installments? Do you want to pay in installments? So the next few projects, I've now said pay us over 12 months. Well, that's fine. But unknowingly, I'm now funding their project for the next 12 months. So it's great in 12 months' time, but not for the next 12 months. Because now, all of a sudden, a few months later, you're like, shit, I can't afford to pay my staff. What have I done here? But there's no one helping you to say, is that the right decision? Because you're not kind of scenario planning. You don't have the data to say, okay, if you're going to make that decision, what happens now for the next, I mean, you're laughing because you know this instinctively. Like if someone came to you at GoProposal, you'd say, well, let's put that in a spreadsheet. Let's see where that gets to. Oh, look, in month 4, you now can't afford to pay your staff. In month 9, it comes good again, but not now. But I had no one with me making those decisions. And I remember someone I'd set up another business at the same time because I knew this wasn't quite working, and we were going to have 50% of each other's business. And this other guy, I remember we were sat in the Crown Hotel in Bawtry, and he said, right, show me the business, show me what's going on. And I was so excited. I had it all mapped out and I was showing him it. And I was buzzing by the time I presented it. And his feedback to me was the moment that I lifted my blindfold off and realized I was on the edge of a cliff. And he was an astute business owner, and he was able to show to me how we'd spread ourselves far too thin, how we wasn't charging enough, how we had no control of our finances, how we were making all these huge mistakes, and how within the next few months we were going to go bust. And it was like, shit. And at that point, I'd lost the enthusiasm for the business. It never felt like a business because it was reliant upon me. And looking back now, I could have pulled us out of that nosedive, but I didn't have the knowledge at the time, and I couldn't pull myself out of that nosedive. And so that business folded. I made sure that the customers were looked after. I made sure that the staff were looked after. I made sure the suppliers were looked after. But off the back of that, we had to remortgage the house. I had to sit in front of staff and let them go. I had to tell Becky about the bad decisions I've made, and that secured loans against the house unknowingly to her. We split up. It caused all sorts of problems. But I remember the liquidator saying to me, it's the saddest situation winding this business up because you had so much right. Like when we've been and spoken to your customers and spoken to your staff, everyone was so happy with what you were doing. You were doing so well, you systemized, etc. And it was just this one component, but that was the most important component that we'd screwed up. So after that, I decided I'm going to go again, but I'm going to study. I'm going to learn. I'm going to figure out what makes a business successful. Who can I learn from? What books do I need to read? What courses are out there? And I'm going to figure out, if I was to distill this down, how do we make businesses so simple? Everyone loves to make things complicated. And the reason why people make it complicated is for one of two reasons. Either because they don't know themselves, or because they can make money out of you by making it seem complicated, because they can then sell you the solution. I wanted to get to the truth, to the core. What makes all successful businesses successful? I wanted to distill down my own set of rules. How do you grow a profitable business? And studying the people who are the world's leading experts in this. And that's what I committed to and invested a lot of money in for the next few years. Throughout the marketing agency, I'd become connected to lots of businesses as well that still trusted me and that wanted me to work with them. So I was able to take these ideas, and it became a playground. I was able to test them on some businesses that were startups, some that were multi-million-pound businesses, and all of a sudden started to see huge impacts. it within short time frames of how do you impact culture, how do you impact their finances, how do you sort out their sales processes, how do you improve their marketing, how do you systemize their businesses. So for the next few years, that's all I did, was to implement these ideas and to start creating my own set of philosophies and principles around what makes a business hugely successful.
It's brilliant. So the next natural step for you was GoProposal, where, talk to us about where that started.
Sure. So there was just a few steps before that made GoProposal quite a logical next step. And so with all of these businesses that I was working with, each time the area that had the most impact on them was how they made money. So the primary function of a business is to make money. People talk about, Simon Sinek talks about, what is your why? Start with why. Beautiful. That's what's going to get you out of bed in the morning. That's what's going to motivate you, right? But you could have an incredible reason why, and your business makes no money and you will fail. You could have a crap reason why and make loads of cash and it'll be successful. What we want is a strong reason why and a business that makes money. So we have to have making money at the core of what you do. Then the next most important thing is your team, build an incredible team that can flourish. And then the next priority is impacting your clients in a positive way. And it has to be that order.
Yes.
Making money first, creating an incredible team second, and possibly impacting your clients third. That is the order. And so the primary function of the business is to make money. And when you look at how a business makes money, it's, this is what I'm going to do for you in exchange for what you're going to pay me. Okay, that's at its most simplest. So it's the promise or the scope of work or the service or the product that you're agreeing to provide to that client in exchange for them giving you some money. And it's how fast they give you that money as well. So in each of these businesses that I was working with, that was the bit I fixed each time. So it was with a landscape gardening business. It was with a plasterer. It was with a local football academy. It was a waste management company. Each time I went and fixed this, and literally within 30 days, the impact on that business was massive. The money started to flow in much quicker. They developed a greater belief about themselves. They were able to sell their services more easily. And if you then fix that, all of the other problems that they have that they believe are their real problems start to disappear, okay? So the analogy I give is, let's say you had an acne outbreak and that was your thing that you wanted to fix, and you rub all these potions and lotions on it and spend all this money and it doesn't cure it. And it's like, well, look, let's just have some more walks in the daylight. Let's drink more water. Let's get healthier. And all of a sudden you fix the core problem and the surface problems start to disappear. Making money is the core problem. You fix that. I saw a post recently of someone saying, I just can't recruit staff. There's just no good staff out there. You can't get good staff. And I thought, you can if you pay them enough. You can get the best staff in the world. So it's not a recruitment problem you've got. It's a money problem you've got. So if you fix that, you can solve so many of the other problems. So I solved this for business after business. And then I was involved in a mastermind group, of which there was an accountant there called Paul Barnes. And I met him a couple of times through these events, but nothing really happened. And then I said, look, can I come and review your processes for you? Maybe there's something I can help you with. And he says, oh no, we've got it locked down. The way we sell and price, we've got this nailed. I said, yeah, that's cool. Could I look anyway? So I went to see what they did, and I reviewed their processes, and they'd arrived at some really strong conclusions. They had a great way of pricing. They were quite systemized, but they didn't have everything in place. And this isn't about implementing pricing software or fixing that part. There's so many things that you have to look at, and it was a culmination of all of my learning that I was able to implement into that, which is, we want strong values around this. We want to create an incredible customer experience. We want to be able to do things fast, convert people quick, remove you as the bottleneck, implement a sales culture, empower the entire team to be able to do this. And all of that I was able to kind of embody and encapsulate in some quite straightforward software that enabled him to sit with his client, easily agree the fees and the scope of work, present a beautiful proposal, and to be able to convert the client on the spot. And once he was comfortable with that, remove him from the process and then get all of his team doing it. Because the biggest issue isn't actually in that initial agreement up front. It's about the continual reviewing of your price and scope that quickly gets out of balance over time. So the only way you can achieve that is by empowering the entire team to be able to do that. And all of my kind of studying and learning about how you do that, I was able to kind of bring in for him. So at the time, GoProposal had kind of existed in a form in all of these other businesses, in all of these other industries. It had been pressure tested. It had yielded fast and results. And so I was able to drop it in for my accountancy place. But even at that point, it wasn't a commercial product. It was just another company I'd helped out. And then through some connections I'd got, another accounting firm heard about it called Northern Accountants in Leeds. And I'd got a message back through someone saying, how are you doing this? How are you achieving this for my accounting place? So I was able to say, well, look, I can implement this for you as well. And that was the spark. And for years, I'd been pursuing this idea of how do I build a scalable business? I'd also had this thought, and whether you want to get into this or not is up to you, but I want to be a millionaire. I want to solve the problem of money in my life. Becky, my now wife, we went to school together, Hayfield School. And when you're in the sixth form, you could vote for various things like who's going to be the whatever, who's going to be this. And it was who's most likely to be a millionaire. And she voted for me. I don't know if that's why she married me. I don't think so. I think it was my looks. But anyway, and you can say that's cold and it's people feel uncomfortable talking about money. But it was a very clear and deliberate pursuit for me that I was looking for this idea that would allow us to solve the problem of money in our lives. And when I look back, I actually was having this battle on many different fronts and trying to push lots of things forward. And the moment these two things lined, it was like, this is it. For the last 20 years, everything that I've been studying, everything that I've been implementing in businesses that I'm able to implement now, I believe this is the best track for me to go and to pursue that dream.
So I've seen an incredible amount of times that spark when you've been with business owners and that's happened. But the reality of businesses, it's hard out there.
Yeah.
There is shit that happens, whether or not you've got money to weather the storm. There is things that go wrong. Business is hard. I used to think I wanted to be a business owner. Very recently, after seeing like yourself, and even though you've been wildly successful, just seeing how hard it is and seeing other people in my life, like my own mum who runs a very successful business, but also seeing how blooming hard it is, like the worries you take home, the sleepless nights. And not everyone, you can listen to these podcasts of you can read your books, but not everyone has you there to create that spark. So what would be the thing you would tell a business owner right now, an accountancy business owner? What's the first thing if they're going through times of trouble, which in these current economic times, probably most of them are, what do they need to do first? What's the first thing they need to go out and get right?
Yeah. So firstly, just to acknowledge that it is tough, that it, and I think you can watch Dragon's Den or The Apprentice or read all these books on businesses and it seems really sexy and like achievable and possible, but it is tremendously hard. And people do only see the glossy outside part. They do only see you getting the nice car, the nice house, or the whatever it is. They don't see the ridiculous late nights of like, and I try and instill this into my kids. You don't stop when you're tired. You stop when it's done. And that's the only time we're going to stop. So time, sleep just doesn't matter. Being prepared to fall out with people, upset people, literally being in tears on the floor with my head in my hands, crying, texting people saying I need help, all those times. People don't all see all that because that's not the cool stuff. You can't post that on LinkedIn. You only post stuff on LinkedIn. Oh, this is what's just happened. This success happened. You don't post like being on the floor, sobbing your heart out, saying, 1 second, let me just snap this. Yeah, in bits again. Yeah, not sleeping. Just had a massive row with my wife. You don't share all that side of it. But that is it. And it's a huge commitment and a burden of responsibility, thinking that now I've got 12 staff or whatever it is. And I'm responsible for their mortgages, and you're constantly thinking what can go wrong. It's, as a business owner, you're driven by fear. Constant fear is the thing that drove me for many, many years of thinking, where could this all fall apart? Where could this go wrong? And so if you're feeling that is natural, and that will keep you protected. And you know me, I'm the most positive person you're going to meet. I'm optimistic. I believe that I will get to the outcome. But you also have to, I don't like to say the word realistic, but you have to be practical and you have to face the truth.
I think not be toxically positive is what's
toxically
important,
positive, yeah. Or toxically negative.
Yeah.
It's not to see things worse than it is. It's not to see things better than it is. We have to see things as they are. So we have to face the truth. But if people are going through tough parts and going through shit, it's to know that you've got well, I'm gonna caveat this as well, but you've got to keep going. You have what it takes to get through this. You can be resourceful, you can be resilient, and you can get through. But you have to also caveat it with, but what if it's not right for you to do this as well?
Yes.
Like we can be lured into thinking that I want to run a business, I want to do this, and you get into it and it becomes so tough that it's affecting your marriage, it's affecting your mental health. It has been for a long time. I know a guy personally, he's got a building company, and I've sat with him and I've tried to help him, and I know he's struggling, but just deep down, I know he's not cut out to run a business. He needs to work for someone. He'll do really well for that, with that, you know. So you do have to question, is this right? But if it's right for you and you're doing it for the right reasons, you've got to push through and get through this. And the question I ask myself, and it's quite interesting you've asked this, is whenever I get something difficult, the question I ask myself is, where's the gift? Where is the gift in this? Okay, I believe I'm a good person. I believe there are forces at work in the universe that are on my side. I believe that I'm aligned with that. So if you remember back to about 3 years ago, when our business was kind of threatened by the move of a competitor around, not to get too technical, but around engagement letters. And so like all of our ACCA members were no longer going to be able to get engagement letters from the ACCA. They had to go through our competitor to get them. And it was just an idle Tuesday. You know, you plan all this shit that can go wrong and you try and mitigate against it. And then you just get an email saying, have you seen this? And you're like, shit, that is well done. Like, fair play to you. And you can get bitter and you can get annoyed in that situation. And we did some scenario planning thinking, what does this mean? Does it mean that we're going to lose 25% of our customers who are ACCA members? Does it mean that our market has now been reduced and we can no longer go after ACCA members? What if they get other governing bodies and professional bodies on board as well? Is this going to restrict our growth in the future? Is this even legal what they've done? Is it anti-competitive? Is it whatever? Blah, 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 right? So you go through this, and then a couple of hours later, I know to get myself out of this really quick. So that was the first thing, my first initial feeling of fear and all that stuff. And then I started asking myself quietly, where's the gift? Where is the gift in this? And your brain comes back, there isn't a gift. This is what's going to go wrong. Yeah, but if there was a gift, where would it be? And just quietly, with a very slight smile in my mind, I kept asking myself, where's the gift? Where's the gift? And I kept trying these different avenues, trying all these different things. Nothing worked. And then I got to this conclusion of, could we create our own engagement letters? And I contacted lawyers and I contacted people high up in this space, and they said, yeah, that's not our area. You think it was writing an engagement letter, but that's not our expertise. You need an agency, or it was a different type of entity. So I then approached those, and then just going through the ACCA's website, I'm sure I saw someone's name on there, and then I went back and I couldn't find it again, and I searched and I saw it. And it was this lady called Val Stewart who wrote the original engagement letters for the ACCA. And she lived quite near me, coincidentally. This was in the middle of the pandemic when you couldn't go and see people. And I found her on LinkedIn, reached out to her, and it was a few days later she came back and said, yeah, I can write your engagement letters for you on one condition. You let me do my best work, and you fund this and you support this continually moving forward. You're not going to question the work that I'm going to do because I'm the expert on this subject. And that you are going to give it the investment this needs to make sure this always is the number one product out there. And I'm like, I'm all in, game on. And what was interesting was I got a message from Danielle. So obviously that then turned into Oversweet. We launched it rather than it being a threat. We never lost anybody. We actually monetized it, and we're able to sell this solution to our members. And then after a few months, it started generating a great income. It became an amazingly successful product in its own right. And then this week, we're now just doing the alpha testing of it being its own product in its own right. You no longer need GoProposal to have it. You can actually just subscribe to Oversweet. And Danielle messaged me yesterday saying, isn't it crazy that what we're about to launch was just that little idea? Yeah. And I thought it was a little idea that came from a huge threat. And what I want to say to those people that are struggling now is, you don't always get to choose what happens to you. You don't always get to choose what's going on in the economy. You don't always get to choose whether a member of staff chooses to leave or not. You don't get to choose whether a competitor does something to threaten you, whether you lose a large client. You don't get to choose any of those things, but you do get to choose how you respond to it. And Tony Robbins says, we always have three choices. What are you going to focus on? What does it mean? And what are you going to do about it? So that's the thing that is in your control right now. If you feel out of control and you feel there's this thing hitting you and hurting you, it's how could you switch your focus onto something that can serve you? And a great question, because it's the questions you ask control your focus.
Yes.
The thing that determines what you're focusing on now is the question that you're asking. If you're asking yourself, why does everything go wrong? Why does it always go wrong for me? Your brain will come up with a million reasons of why you deserve everything to go wrong for you, and that's all you'll get. But if you ask yourself a different question, which is, how can I use this to my advantage? How could this be the greatest gift that has ever happened to me? How can I get through this? How can I not only go through this, but how can I grow through this? The moment you start asking yourselves better questions, you'll start to get better answers.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I had shivers as you were talking there. So that
shivers because you've experienced it as well, and you've been part of that, and you're remembering it. Or
yes, and I think some of the most successful, if I look back on my life and my career so far, some of the most brilliant things to ever happen to me have happened as a result of quitting or stopping doing something. Or a lot of people will say, so I adore my job, like love it, which is why I can talk so openly about work-life balance. But something that people always say to me is, oh, well, you're lucky because you've got a job you love. I'm like, I'm not lucky. I'm in this job because I would not settle for a job I hated. Yeah. I had jobs before this. Like the first one I had when I moved to London was at Harrods, and I worked there for such a small amount of time. And I remember every day I got on the bus to work, and I used to look at my watch and think, only 8 hours and 40 minutes and then I'll be free.
Yeah.
And I was on the bus on the way home once, and I rang my mum and I said, I'm going to quit tomorrow. And she was in panic. She was like, you can't quit. What do you mean? You're not going to have an income. How are you going to pay your rent next month? So I'm going to hand my notice in. I've got 30 days. I will find another job. I cannot have another, at least if I hand my notice in, I know I'm about to leave and I can finish off those last 30 days. And it's knowing, everyone will tell you, well, you can't have lots of jobs on your CV. And it's like, well, that's maybe true, but I'm not going to settle for something that makes me unhappy. So yeah, it gave me shivers just hearing, out of the negative things, out of the lowest times in your life, when you quit, when you say no, when you pass on an opportunity, or when you find an opportunity in the darkness, they're often the things you look back on that are the most powerful. And if I think about even personal relationships and things, when you let go of something, they're the points that you can't see at the time, but years later you look back and go, that was why I'm here. That was what was so important.
Just that point there on the darkness. I read a lovely quote recently, which is when it said, when you think it's your most darkest time, don't think that you've been buried, think that you've been planted.
Yes. And
just that switching of your thinking can then determine what you're going to do next. And just as you're saying that about Harrods, and we're back to your first line of questioning to me, which is when I turned around and says, you said, is this an interview? And I said, it is now. I knew of your experience, Harrods. I knew of your experience as a waitress in a restaurant. And I know I've done that myself. I know what graft that is, like literally dealing with customers face to face, having to wow them. We've talked about this before, like when customers come in and you're serving them, treating them like they're your family, and that you're giving them the best experience and genuinely caring for them and dealing with problems and bad customers and all that type of stuff. And you'd been through that. You'd been through the VIP department of Harrods, where you had to work with £1 million plus spending customers and create the most incredible experiences. And then you worked for your SaaS business as well. So you had everything that was just perfect to bring to GoProposal. But when you talk about not settling, this brings us back another circle as well, which is it comes back to standards as well. So the results that you're getting are not because of the economy. It's not because of your business. It's not because of your location. It's not because of your knowledge, your qualifications, your competitors, your clients. Nothing to do with any of that. The results you're getting are a direct result of your standards. And are you prepared to maintain those standards and hold those standards and not let them slip? And it's, I've learned it's not about perfectionism. You don't have to be perfect, because those standards have to be commercially make sense as well. It's like 85% good enough is good enough. We can get out the door with that, but you do have those standards. I have those standards. And when we've looked back on the success and continued growth of GoProposal, it comes down to us maintaining those standards with our values, with our team members, with our customers, with everything that we do, and never letting them slip.
Yes. Listen, James, thank you for telling your stories as you have today. We'll be back for the next episode, we're going to go really deep on pricing and profitability.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me kind of talk through some of those things, because some of those things I've not talked around before.
No.
Or to that level. And so it's useful for me as well to kind of unpack them and think them through to arrive at some interesting conclusions. Thank you.
Thank you.